And it is time for Table Talk this morning. We are happy to have Troy Shelley joining us in studio. Going to be talking a little bit about climate change today, as that is a hot topic around not just here in Utah, but around the globe. Troy, appreciate you stopping by, and going to be talking a little bit about, as I mentioned, climate change is the subject for today.
Let's talk about climate change.
Let's jump right on into it. Big topic you wanted to talk about to start, kind of just our atmosphere, right? Like if you want to really break it down to something basic, the atmosphere and the gases that make it up.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really need to look at is, does man have an effect on the environment? And I would say absolutely man does have an effect on the environment. Here's something to look at. If you look up through the Sanpete or Sevier valleys into Juab down in through Millard, if man didn't have an effect on the environment, all you would be seeing is sagebrush. But instead, what we see is beautiful green valleys with sprinkler systems and the ability to grow crops. And what's happening in the political agenda is a lot of the politicians are trying to restrict the ability for man to thrive. And if you look at, well, let's first talk about energy and power. The only way that a country can thrive is if they have available, affordable, and reliable energy. If they don't have that, they cannot thrive. You can look at solar and wind, which are great substitutes, but it's not reliable. In the sun, or when the sun's shining, you have good solar power. When the wind's blowing, you have good wind power. But if you don't have either of those, you have no power without hydrocarbon power. And hydrocarbon power powers the world. You cannot afford to build an energy grid without hydrocarbon power. Nuclear power is a very good option, and a lot of people are afraid of nuclear power because of some kind of a meltdown, which has happened. But the nuclear disasters that have happened have primarily always been man-caused from man overriding the safety mechanism. Now, there are some instances where natural disaster has caused some nuclear fallout, but regardless, I mean, we don't, the nuclear energy industry or Nuclear Energy Agency was created in about 1972, and since the creation of the Nuclear Energy Administration, we have had no new nuclear power plants permitted. So for right now and into the foreseeable future, throughout our lifetime, we will have hydrocarbon power. There is no substitute. You cannot possibly run a manufacturer or a manufacturing industry that requires high heat off of battery power. The ability to store that much battery power is near impossible, and yet the transportable power that hydrocarbon power offers is coal. And we ship coal, and everyone sees there's an attack on the coal industry, attack on the oil and gas industry. It's the hydrocarbon power that's getting throttled back. Now here's part of the problem, and we've got this inland port authority that's working to put some of the ability to ship here closer to home, and we would like to be able to export our excess coal, but we certainly need to generate enough power for our own needs. And with some of the regulations that are coming down, we're getting throttled back on the ability to generate hydrocarbon power. And without hydrocarbon power, we just cannot succeed. And part of the issue that I see that's going on is I have a copy of the European Union agreement that they want all of these third world countries to sign off on. and it restricts their ability to use hydrocarbon power. In fact, it restricts it to a point that they cannot expand anything beyond what they currently have, which means that a third world country will always be held in slavery. That's it. They can never get beyond their dismal state because they have no ability to get hydrocarbon power. Now people say, well, hydrocarbons are contributing to the global warming. Okay, I can accept that that's a possibility, but to look at that, let's look at how one instance where man had an effect on the environment and he learned from it. When the pioneers came into the valley, they came down through Immigration Canyon, and they came down into the Salt Lake Valley, and they decided that they needed to build cabins. So they went back up Immigration Canyon, and they cut lumber. They cut all the wood, and they hauled it down, and they built cabins. The next year, they had massive flash floods. They didn't realize the value that the trees had to the earth, to holding the earth in place. And so when they clear-cut all those trees, they had these flash floods. They learned from their mistake, and they set regulation that says, look, you can't clear-cut all the trees because there's damage. So did man have an effect on the environment? Absolutely. So in the same sense, when we generate coal or power from coal, we have learned that some of the exhaust from the coal has caused serious health concerns. So, and I wish I had it right here in front of me if I can find it really quick. Oh, yep. Okay, so from 1999 to 2020, there were 460,000 deaths that were related to coal power. So according to the CDC, 460,000 deaths associated with coal power. Well, they required scrubbers to be put on all of the power plants that generate power from coal. Of that 460,000 deaths, 95% of them were in the first 5 years, because after that they put the scrubbers on, and there was only 5% of the rest of those deaths that happened after. And so we can look at it and say, well, yeah, but it still caused death, and I get that, but let me throw something at you, Tanner. What is something that a third world country, it would be pointless for them to have that we have and we rely on?
Oh boy.
I should have prepped you with some ideas. Sorry.
Yeah, you're completely fine. Thinking of so more of like a want, not a need necessarily. Oh boy, some kind of a manufacturing would come to mind with some of these.
Yep, they those with no power have no ability to manufacture.
Right.
Have you ever seen somebody on home oxygen?
Yes.
Yeah. Do they have to have that to live?
Absolutely.
100% pointless in a third world country. You can't have it because they don't have the power to run it. People die. That's why third world countries, that's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons why third world countries, life expectancy is about half of what it is in the United States. Most people in the world don't have enough power to run a refrigerator through the night. Billions. We're not talking tens of millions. We're talking billions of people don't have enough power to run a refrigerator. This agreement that I saw with the European Union, there's in my opinion one evil statement in that well, there's lots, but one that sticks out to me is one that says every country must realize that they have a role to play in the world's economy and that they will strive to fulfill that role. To me, that is incredibly corrupt, because that means if you dig cobalt, but you don't further manufacture cobalt, you can never further manufacture cobalt. You will always just dig it. So in other words, you will be our slave, because you will only stay in your lane, which means that they will never have available, affordable, reliable power. They will always just dig in their mine and can never further produce. And so as we look at this and we see that the United States is restricting these third world countries from being able to thrive by getting available power, they're being, in some degree, they're being held in slavery. And we are willing accomplices. Every one of us who's willing to buy from Amazon or Walmart or any of the big companies, we are willing accomplices because the power, a success of a business is made in the purchasing, not in the selling. So everybody, because of supply and demand and competitive nature, everybody has to sell product at the same or close to the same price, but not everybody has to buy product at the same price. And as long as we can restrict, well, we meaning they, because it's not me if it were up to me, but restricting third world countries from getting available power restricts them from being able to thrive. And these countries have a lot to learn. Unfortunately, in many cases, the third world countries just blindly trust the United States is looking out for their best interest, and they use the climate change as a way to manipulate and get their way into these countries. And I've seen these agreements just reek of that. But so as we look at climate change, we hear a lot of talk about how the Earth is warming or the climate's changing or whatever. A couple of things to really realize, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is maybe to wake up and say, hey, wait, just a minute, are we being told the truth? And can we possibly do our own research? I'm not a scientist, but can we do our own research? And when we look at greenhouse gases, what function do greenhouse gases have? Do you know what they do? Is one of the functions they do is they evaporate water off of the earth, and water is a never-ending resource. The water that comes down and waters our crops don't keep the water. They keep the carbon from the carbon dioxide, and they split the molecule. They keep the carbon and they release 2 parts of oxygen. So by them doing that, we have 21% oxygen in the atmosphere. Water vapor is 4% of the Earth's atmosphere, and it's the number 1 greenhouse gas. Everybody thinks it's carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide amounts for 0.5% of the Earth's atmosphere, and all of plant life is competing for that carbon dioxide because it's plant food. So when it rains, the rain knocks nitrogen out of the air, because nitrogen in the air, it's okay, beneficial, but once it gets into the ground, that's where the plants can benefit from the nitrogen. So then it starts to pull the nitrogen out of the soil, and that creates plant growth. And then along comes the heat of the sun and evaporates the water. And we a lot of times look at evaporation as water lost, but it's not. It's evaporated into the atmosphere, and it's warm, so it goes up, and it's carried up into the mountains where it's cooler. And as it cools, then it condensates and releases again, either in dew or in rain or in snow. But it releases again, runs back into the streams, back down into our lakes, back into our man-made pipelines, and back out into our green fields. So as we look at climate change, let's look at it from a perspective that it's a positive thing as well. The average lifespan of humans on Earth, in the United States, our average lifespan has almost doubled since the Industrial Revolution. The average lifespan of those in third world countries are still about the same. they need energy, and they have to have hydrocarbon energy. If they try to make it off of solar, people look at it and say, well, they can always get solar. Well, solar for some of these people is 3 years labor. They can't just go buy a solar. We have to look at it from a very realistic standpoint. And if you want to look and do your own research, there's stuff like I say, I'm not a scientist. It's just something. This is a topic that I've decided I'm going to dive into and I'm going to get to know, and through sorry, I lost my mindset, but we have to have available power. If like our need for energy is skyrocketing. If we had available energy right now, we could double the use of energy that we need. People want to drive their solar power or their electric powered cars. That's fine. I have no problem somebody wanting to buy an electric car, but all you're doing is shifting the carbon emissions from your car exhaust pipe to somewhere else. In fact, it's even more because of your power loss and the extra energy that it has to produce in order to power the car. But it's okay. You can do your feel good moment. That's fine. But it still takes hydrocarbon power. And I've heard some things about Facebook's going entirely solar and wind. Well, okay, that could be true, but here's the reality. The reality is they still use hydrocarbon power. They just buy the rights from other people to say that we're going to use your right to claim solar and wind, and you have to claim our use of hydrocarbon power. They cannot run their system off of solar and wind. It just doesn't work. You have to have the reliable, available, and affordable energy, which is what hydrocarbon power does. So as you look at this is the one last thing I'll point out is have you ever heard of the Doomsday Glacier?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so the Doomsday Glacier, they're talking about that. If that melts, it's going to raise sea levels. I'm going to tell you how to do your own research because they say it's now at an all-time critical stage. Do your own research. Go onto Google Earth. Go to the history and just follow the history right up through, and you can see that the Doomsday Glacier is just like the heartbeat of the country or of the world. You can see it expand and contract and expand and contract. So anyway, that's my spiel. I just hope that people can start to look at this and say, because man has affected the environment, we live in a better world.
One thing you did want to hit before we wrap up, the good neighbor policy. What specifically can you tell us about that? Okay,
so the good neighbor policy is if we're going to generate power and emit exhaust or pollutants, we have to limit what we're emitting. And so as we generate power, we've got to do everything in our power to control our emissions, because there's no question as we burn coal, there's going to be toxic emissions that are generated. Man has the ability to capture that. It's similar to if I go dig some kind of a mineral out of the mountain and I contaminate a stream. I don't have to stop mining. I just have to stop the contaminants from getting down the stream. And it's the same thing. We just, if we're going to generate the power, let's also make sure we control our environment so that we don't further pollute the environment. So we still capture the pollutants. And as we do that, we're all good neighbors. And that's kind of what that policy is written around.
Well, Troy, we appreciate you stopping by and providing a load of information for people to receive and go forward. Appreciate you again, and best of luck as you keep researching this going forward.
Okay, thanks for the time, Tamner.
That is Troy Shelley joining us here this morning, talking about climate change and how man has had effects on the environment throughout time.